Forum. Please note this is an open meeting, and as required by DC Code 2-7578, this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be made available to the public. The video file with both audio and video will be shared on DDOT's YouTube channel within 7 days after the meeting has ended, and that's youtube.com/DDOT videos. This meeting is being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page that can be found at facebook.com/DDOTDC. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may enter any questions or comments in the Q&A, which we will review in the next few slides. If you need technical support during this meeting, please call 202-997-8354. Using WebEx audio and video. Everyone is on mute during the presentation. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the Q&A and comment period. This helps to ensure the meeting runs smoothly and there are no auditory disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you will need to use the raised hand feature, which we will cover shortly. Next slide. Audio and muting. Everyone is on mute. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the Q&A and comment period. This helps to ensure the meeting runs smoothly and there are no auditory disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you will need to use the raised hand feature. For closed captions, WebEx has automated system-generated closed captions that are available during the meeting. Click the CC icon in the lower left corner of the window to turn on closed captions. There are additional settings, so you may just adjust the appearance of the captions if needed. Using the WebEx mobile application, click the three dots icon, scroll down, and select the closed caption option. Make sure the toggle switch is blue. And then for video, your video camera is off by default and you will not be able to share a video. Next slide. Using WebEx during the Q&A. If you have a question during the presentation, send it via the Q&A feature. To send a question, click the three dot icon in the bottom right side of the WebEx window and select Q&A. A new panel or window will appear. In the Ask field, select All Panelists. Click the text box to type your question and press the Enter key to send it. Now, if you joined via browser or mobile app, click the Q&A or question mark icon to access the Q&A and ask a question. If you dialed in by phone, dial *3 to use the raise hand feature. This indicates to the project team that you would like to speak and ask a question. Using WebEx raise your hand feature. If you have a question or comment that you would like to speak up about, please raise your hand. This indicates to the project team that you would like to speak. To virtually raise your hand, click the participants icon on the bottom right of the WebEx window. Hover your cursor next to your name and click the raised hand icon. Alternatively, you may press the following keys on your keyboard: Control, Shift, and R. If you joined via browser or mobile app, click the three dot icon and select raised hand. If you dialed in by phone, dial *3 to use the raise hand feature. Okay, I'll turn it over. We'll have a short video and right after I read the agenda. So the agenda will flow as follows: the DC plug introductory video, which will follow this, the DC plug background, the existing system model, proposed underground system model, the project status and timelines, project scope and limits, maintenance of traffic, communication strategy, and then our contact information. And now we'll watch a quick video.
The District of Columbia has experienced more violent storms in recent years. resulting in extensive power outages. For this reason, the district and Pepco are working to reduce power outages by moving many of the overhead power lines underground to improve the infrastructure and enhance resiliency. Neighborhoods affected by construction will be notified well in advance of the project start date. This will include the posting of no parking signs. Construction will begin with the coordination of streets and sidewalks impacted in your neighborhood. Signs will be posted, and flaggers will direct vehicles and pedestrians around construction crews. Before any digging begins, other existing utility lines that may be in the path of construction will be carefully identified and marked in the field. In some cases, small plants, trees, and grass will need to be removed from public spaces to allow for digging and placement of new underground equipment. But we will do our best to retain as much vegetation as possible. Any public property disturbed by this work will be restored to its original condition. Construction workers will use asphalt saws to cut the pavement. A backhoe will dig a trench for the placement of the distribution line. Periodically along the main primary line, manholes and tap holes will be required to house equipment and to provide access for inspections and repairs. The backhoe will also be utilized in these cases to excavate for these structures. In order to meet jurisdictional safety requirements, shoring will be provided in the trench to ensure stability. Pepco uses either fiberglass or plastic PVC conduit to protect underground power lines. Concrete will be poured into the trench to encase and secure the conduit, and steel plates will be placed over the trench temporarily to make the road usable to vehicle traffic. After the concrete is set, the steel plates will be removed and the trench will be repaved in sections. Transformers, switches, and other ancillary equipment will be set in place. Equipment such as transformers and switches will be installed either in the roadway or the sidewalk, depending on space availability. Underground cable will be installed. Landscaping will be restored as needed and roads paved. Overhead primary electric wires will be removed from poles, but secondary service and communication lines will remain. Finally, the new underground power lines will be energized. While electricity will remain on throughout the project, there will be a short scheduled outage needed to switch from the overhead lines to the new underground system. We appreciate your patience while the District and Pepco improve the future of electrical service for the District of Columbia residents.
We will begin our presentation, and I'll turn it over to Mark.
Good evening, everyone. This is Mark Frere, one of the senior project managers working with Pepco on the DC Plug program. As you can see, the DC Plug background, you can see the background, the timeline dates back to 2012, when the mayor established the undergrounding task force following severe storms. So it was determined that improving the electrical infrastructure in DC would require a significant investment. And this just shows how Pepco and DDOT presented what then became the DC Plug initiative. And if you go over, and as it was approved, you can see the timeline shows the approvals of the first, second, and third banding plan to underground the 20 feeders. And as you go, and if you go to the middle, you can see just the budget and how it's split, the $500 million split through Pepco, the district portion, and DDOT. Moving on to the next slide. So here you can see an existing overhead system. So during a storm, you can see if a tree knocks down the primary overhead lines, you see the impact is significant. It pretty much sets the whole subdivisions and everything leaves it without power. And this is the effect of having an overhead primary line system currently. So if you go to the next slide, it shows the primary lines being undergrounded. And as you can see, if there is a storm causing a tree to knock it down, you can see that the effects of this outage is minimal. You're only seeing a few houses going down as opposed to everything going as opposed to everything being left without power. So it's a lot more resilient, as you can see, because it's not affecting the entire neighborhood. It's only affecting a few houses. And now I can kick it over to Caesar.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everybody. My name is Cesar Barreto. I work with the District Department of Transportation Infrastructure under the Infrastructure and Project Management Administration. As part of this DC Plug project, the feeder 75, we do have some timelines that are already met, and currently it's a design that is ongoing. The project kicked off on March 2023 with a 30% design submission on September 2023, followed with several meetings on October 2023 and February and November 2023 with ANCs and council members. Our 65% design was completed in March this year. Currently, we're on this open house and we are expecting an 100% final submission during June, the month of June 2024, with the final submission for advertisement during the summer. Next slide. As far as the construction timeline, we divide this in between two phases. We do the civil construction, which is where we do most of the trenches, excavation, and placing the electrical conduit on the floor, on the ground, on the sidewalk, on the street or roadway, depending on where we have space. And then we have the electrical construction, which is when we power those electrical lines and make sure that we can replace the primary lines where they are on the poles into the underground phase. Our civil construction is expected to start on spring 2025, followed by a completion in winter 2025, and then the electrical construction phase will start in fall 2026, follow with a energizing on fall 2026. I apologize, the electrical construction completion on fall 2026. As part of the project scope for the civil construction, what we do first and foremost, we make sure that the erosion and sediment control is maintained. We don't want to have erosion. We don't want to have sediment control. Those are DOEE standards, Department of Environmental and standards. We also do installation of dump bank, electrical manholes, tap holes, and transformer enclosures. We do roadway restoration where it's needed. And we also do the pavement markings as well, based on the impact that we have done to the roadway. The electrical phase of the work happens once the civil construction is finished. As you can see in the pictures, starting with the top right side, you can see a picture of the trench, be it excavated trench and putting some electrical conduit on the floor, installing. On the bottom of that picture on the right side, you can see an image of the placement of the transformer enclosure or tap hole. And then on the bottom right side, left side, you can see similar to what will be a finished product on the sidewalk of a transformer enclosure or a tap hole. Next slide. In similar motion, these are some pictures, imagery from the proposed work that we intend to do. On the top left, you're going to see a transformer enclosure placed on the grass section next to the curb on the sidewalk side. Basically, that's how it's going to look in the grass side. On the right side, top right side, we have a switch manhole. So at the end of the work, you're only going to see a sidewalk with a manhole on it. And then on the bottom left side, you see another transformer enclosure, but placed in front of the residence house or in the sidewalk section, in the public space. All the work happens in the public space. No invasion of private property at all. Of course, the bottom right side, you have a image of a tap hole in the green space, in the sidewalk section, but next to the curb on the green space, within the public space. Next image. As far as the work, here is a map imagery of the proposed work of the feeder 75. The work begins in Macomb Street on the bottom right side, Macomb Street from 44th Street all the way to 46 or Foxhole, heading up into Indian Lane and then Glenbrook. I believe, I apologize for not labeling that properly. And then we have 49th Street going up all the way until we hit Butterworth Place and Albemarle. It's currently around 2 miles, just in case. Maintenance of traffic during the construction. As you know, we are as the District Department of Transportation, we are required to maintain the traffic during construction. We do maintain accessibilities for residents and businesses. Um, we do parking impacts, but it will have a minimum notice of 72 hours in advance. Of course, our public outreach will be interacting with the residents and the ANC meetings and the community, making sure they're aware we are coming a month in advance and then a weekly notice. And then you'll see our signs 72 hours in advance to make sure you're aware that we're going to start impacting that section. Um, we do provide safe accommodations for pedestrian and bicyclists during the construction. And then our public outreach, as mentioned, will be coordinating with the residents and other stakeholders throughout the construction. In reference to the maintenance of traffic, we would like to share some of the imagery, some imageries of how these maintenance of traffic will look like. On the top image, you'll see a designated work zone on the left side, covered by traffic drums. You can see a little red section on the bottom side of the road where we're literally excavating, which resemble the excavation. Next to that, you see a bike lane and travel lanes for the vehicles, along with the travel lane, bike lane on the other side. Um, the bottom picture shows, in similar fashion, a image of how we have the work zone. In this time on the right side of the road, we are maintaining the travel lanes. And in this case, instead of bike lanes, we will have a parking space. And these are examples. It can rotate or minimize the space, all depending. On similar fashion, one more time, this is an imagery that shows the work zone being in the middle of the road. And if that's the case, we'll have travel lanes separating that work zone, and we'll maintain the parking space on the left or the right of this imagery, depending on where the parking space is necessary. In similar fashion, it can also happen with bike lanes. If we have a bike lane, we will maintain the travel lanes in the center, while the work zone is in the center lane, and we will maintain the bike lane on the right side or left side. Another image of the work zone. In this specific case, there's no parking. Basically, it entails the work zone and 2 travel lanes in this specific case. It might be a share the road scenario for those that are having bikes in this specific lane. So bikes and pedestrians and drivers will share the road or the travel lane. And I'll kick it over to Raisha.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Um, Again, my name is Raisha with the Community Outreach Team, and we're just going to go over our outreach strategies for this project. So far, we've reached out to the council member's office, the milkers, to let them know about this project coming up. And we have also reached out to the ANCs and given a high-level presentation. And right now, we're hosting you at our 65% Design Plus virtual open house. Up next, we have planned to um, visit the residents that will have TE transformer enclosures installed in the public space near their homes. Those residents will get a special meeting with the outreach coordinator to notify them of the structure being installed near their home. After that, we'll close out with a summary, 100% design summary, one pager, and then we'll get into the pre-construction distribution. So once we get to the pre-construction phase, we start to implement our education plan, and that's when we do our 30-day notification prior to construction. You'll get a 15-day notification prior to construction, and then again, a 7-day notification prior to construction. After that, you should see the 72-hour no parking notices to know that we're really coming in 3 days, so at least 3 days. And then you'll get some residence letters as needed. So those residents with transformer enclosures, they will get letters. You might get letters if there's sidewalk work coming to your area. You might get letters for milling and paving and things like that. We also like to distribute the schedule regularly to our stakeholder database. We encourage you to go onto our website, dcpluginfo.com. to sign up to be a part of our list. That way we can send you that schedule as we get them from the contractors once we get into the construction phase. We also do traffic advisories and also distribute those to our list and post those on our website. And we attend the ANC meetings regularly once we're in the construction phase, just to also give them an update, quick update during the announcements. Again, you'll be assigned a dedicated outreach team, and after that, we'll get into the electrical outreach. And during that phase, we make sure that we do phone calls to those residents that may have a short period of losing power once we start to transfer over from, upper to lower. Then we as also still attend the ANC meetings regularly, and you will get a 72-hour notice as well on top of the phone calls. Here's some examples for our collateral, and then we also have a 24-hour hotline, which is 844-758-4146. And I mentioned our website. That's it for me. I'll turn it over to Peyton.
Great. Thank you, Raisha. And thank you everybody for joining tonight's meeting. We're just about to get into the Q&A question period of the meeting. If you have any questions, please take this time now to send it in either the Q&A box or the chat, whichever is easiest for you. And I'll read them aloud for our team to answer. And if you want to raise your hand, you can as well. And if you called in and have a question, as Jam said earlier, just hit *3. That will raise your hand for us and we can unmute you. Before we get into the actual Q&A, I did want to highlight the survey, the Title VI survey that will pop up for you at the end of this meeting. When you close out of the meeting, you'll be automatically redirected to the survey. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes, it's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to take the survey. It's really helpful for us in planning the next meetings as they're coming forward in your neighborhood and kind of what you would like to see. So please take that time. You'll be automatically redirected, or if you want to, you can go to tinyurl.com/titlevi-survey. Again, that's tinyurl.com/titlevi-survey. And now, time for the Q&A. Right now, I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, Elise, I do see that you raised your hand. And I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You may have to accept the unmuting. There you go. We should be able to hear you.
So thank you guys so very much. A couple very quick questions. Make sure I understood. So the communication lines will remain on the poles. The poles will remain with communication lines, or will all of these be? Will you not coordinate with the communication lines that may or may not be necessary? I think there's some there that are old and unused.
So I'll let Pepco answer that, but in short, those lines do stay above ground. They'll put the overhead primary lines underground and then shorten the pole a couple feet. But the power lines for the most part, or the communication lines, will stay above. But in terms of the other overhead lines that may not be in use, Mark, do you guys do anything to get those taken down, or?
Hey, this is Jignesh.
Great.
Hey, this is Jignesh. She's talking about the communication line. Pepco is not planning to take any communication line or doing that during this construction. We only worry about the primary on the top of the pole, and the secondary that supplies the house, that's going to stay on the top of the pole. So we're going to make a connection to that.
So the drops to the house will still come off the poles.
Yes.
Okay. All right. A couple quick questions then. The placement of the transformers. When will we get a notification of that?
You should begin getting notification about that in like the next month or two. As the design gets finalized, we'll start reaching out to the residents.
That is correct. As a Caesar, usually the notification starts when we finalize our design and have a better understanding on where the transformer enclosures will be placed. Especially in all the work happens within the public space We do not go into private property to place these. Everything happens within the public right of way. So you will get notifications where the transformer closer will be located. And in addition to that, we make sure that it's within, one more time, the public space, the public right of way space. Sometimes it's in the grass zone, sometimes it's in the street. We're going to have it on the street. Sometimes it all depends. It varies within every road.
And one more time, the site to sign up for the notification schedules, is that just your same, just?
DCpluginfo.com, and then you'll see when you're on the website that there are an option to view the feeders. You would click this feeder, feeder 075, and then there will be a tab there to sign up for notifications.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute you again. If you have any questions, again, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you back off. I have a couple questions in the chat and I see another raised hand. But first, let's do this. So it said, where will you place transformer enclosures on those Butterworth blocks that do not have a sidewalk, where the private property directly abuts the roadway?
This is Caesar. We're currently on the phase of design, and when it comes to the Butterworth blocks, we look into the right of way for the public space, and we analyze the best position. We also look into the other utilities that are already underground to make sure that we're not hitting each other or blocking each other as well. Currently, it's too early to tell where they're going to be placed, but at a minimum, those primary conduits will be placed within the public space. I'm sorry for being short answer on that, but since we're currently in the 65% phase, we don't have an actual position yet.
Thank you, Caesar. And then I have a question. During construction, what will be the effect on the ability of elderly or mobility challenged persons to enter and leave their homes? Can one park a car in front of the house while bringing the elderly resident from the house and back inside the house?
As mentioned in the maintenance of traffic, this is if there is an issue during the process of coordination and public outreach, if you let the public outreach personnel aware, they will let us, the resident engineer and the office engineer aware, and coordination can be made in order to facilitate that movement and mobility for people with disabilities or elderlies. I know sometimes it's a challenge. As a former ADA coordinator for the agency, Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator, I know it's a challenge. So coordination will happen and make sure, and you will also know the schedule as well. The schedule is always available to let you aware when we're going to be working in specific areas.
Perfect. Yeah. So just to add to that, Caesar, if I may, just if you could reach out to the outreach coordinator when you see that 72-hour no parking pop up, or beforehand, if you're closely watching the schedule, they'll work with the construction team to do their best to provide access. And then I do have a hand raised from a call-in user. I'm going to go ahead and begin to unmute you. I can't see the full number. I think you have to accept as well. And it should prompt you from the phone.
Hello, my name is Timothy Talley. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I received one of your neighborhood handouts. I live on the corner of Nebraska Avenue and Macomb Street, which is the 4500 block of Macomb Street, which according to the map is in the area where the feeder line is going to be buried.
Okay.
I tried to log on to the tinyurl.com/DC plug75 and was unable to. I don't know if there's a problem on your end or my end, but in the event, I listened to the presentation. I have a couple of questions. One, when specifically do you expect the construction to begin on the 4500, 4400 block of Macomb Street Northwest off of Nebraska?
So this is Caesar. Currently, we don't have a specific time frame for that as we are still in the design phase of the project. We are expecting to go in construction on spring 2025. Peyton, if you can go to the slide and correct me, I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
you're correct. Spring 2020.
2025. Once we hit the spring 2025, we will have more accurate time frame on where we're going to hit Macomb, because that's up to the contractor to develop the schedule on when they're going to install items and which street they're going to hit first. Um, we do have to, as DDOT employees, we do have to approve that schedule, and that schedule will be available on the website, dcpluginfo.com. And of course, if you sign up for the join listserv, you'll get notifications on we're going to be heading into. At the same time, you
And
will
how
receive
will we
notifications.
how will we know how to join the listserv?
It's
Sure. So if you go
Nice talking. Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
if you go to the project website, it should be on the flyer that you received, www.dcpluginfo.com. You'll see an option to click feeders, and you would go to your feeder, feeder 075. And once you're in that, you'll be able to sign up for the listserv.
Okay. Have you begun marking our street, the 4500 block? I see yellow lines going down the right-hand side from Nebraska to 45th Street, and those markings are on the right-hand side, above or below on the street where the feeder line, which runs through on the utility poles along 45th and 44th Street, is located. Have you begun marking the streets?
this is Caesar, though that actually happens within our survey intake. We did have to do additional survey for this project. So what you see there is probably our team, our design team evaluating where the other utility lines are so we don't impact those utilities. So we can do parallel work or adjacent work to those lines without being impacted or causing any conflict. We, as mentioned, we're in the design phase. We are not yet in the construction phase at all. We are almost a year away.
So you haven't been marking up the streets. And I ask this because Washington Gas has been relocating gas pipelines, relocating meters in houses to the streets and working on our street, as has DDOT on the sidewalks. So my next question is, do you anticipate, if the feeder lines are running on poles alongside streets on one side, do you anticipate burying those in the street or on the sidewalk, as you intimated you might be doing on some sites?
To answer your question, it might be a hybrid mode of both sidewalk, street, a combination of both. It all depends where there's availability, accessibility, due to the other utility lines. The yellow markings means gas, just in case. So those
right.
are where
Okay.
the anticipating gas lines are, just in case.
Okay. And one other question, what's your success rate in restoring power? You said that it may temporarily be interrupted. So in your experience with this project so far within the district in Ward 3, have you had, or outside Ward 3, have you had any interruptions longer than temporary?
I will defer
Interruption
that.
of power.
I will defer that to Jignesh or Mark, since they're the Pepco folks.
Hey, Caesar, so thanks. So this is Jignesh. Are you talking about after the construction done, or as the current right now situation?
No, not right now. For example, last year we had quite a storm in our area, Wesley Heights, Spring Valley, Palisades, where there were substantial interruptions in power due to down power lines. So, we appreciate the effort to bury the lines so that it won't happen again, or has happened as frequently. But my issue is, once construction begins on my block, which is the 4500 block of Macomb, or the 4400 block of Macomb, where the interruption occurred due to a tree falling on a power line, which took down a transformer and 1 or 2 poles. So that lasted 4 days. And my question is, once you begin construction on my street, how long can I anticipate my power to be out during that construction phase and restoration?
During the civil construction phase in spring of 2025, when we start the civil construction, you're not going to see any impact on a power line. We're not touching any power line at that time. But once we finish all the civil construction, then Pepco will come back in the fall of 2025. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Fall of 2026.
2026, sorry, yeah. Then you, once we put all the cables in and everything is done, transfer all the equipment's in, and when we start doing the connection, at that time, you might see the power outage about around the 4 hours or so when we make a connection from overhead to underground. When we transfer your connection from overhead to underground, then you will see, and you will get the notification at that time when we do that work.
Okay, so my original question was, what is your experience? What is your success ratio in terms of restoring power once the lines have been buried? I mean, have any neighborhoods been affected by longer than normal power outages during a period of time?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think I can answer this just because I work in communications, so I send out all the notices. No power outage during the electrical phase has ever exceeded 4 hours. And from any feeder that I've worked on, and I've only not worked on one. So the answer is no.
So that's the transition. That's the transition from the overhead to the underground. I think what you're asking is, if there is a storm after everything's been undergrounded, how long is it typically? Does an outage typically last? Is that what you're asking, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And
well, I'm asking if there are any inordinate, more than hours or days of power outages that we will have to contend with.
Yeah. So I guess Jignesh or Mark, have you experienced any long-lasting outages where the power lines are undergrounded from a tree hitting the secondary lines?
Tree hitting the secondary line, it's overhead that we will send the crews right away. But underground section, normally it doesn't occur that often unless a cable fault or substation has issues. Because if substation has outages, because that's supplied from overhead from the transmission line. If transmission line get hit and substation don't have power, then you will see the impact on the power. We need to fix the substation. But normal circumstances, if a substation has the power, mostly this one doesn't go out that often. And that's our experience with the underground feeder.
Yep.
And this one is the network.
Jignesh, if I can.
This one is a network feeder. Yeah, go ahead, Caesar.
If I may add on a similar note, I would like to attest that this has been resilient and reliable energy. We do have 3 feeders that have been completed: feeder 14900, 308, and 368. And we had locations where trees would have fallen off and would have cut the energy, and the whole neighborhood still had energy because it was underground already. So we had that reliable rate. We have those facts.
Yeah. And just to add to what Caesar's saying, I actually live along one of those feeders that he mentioned. Across from Rock Creek Park, a tree fell on the power lines and the home still had power, which is something that we'd never experienced before the lines were undergrounded. So it is a much
that was done for the benefit of American University burying those power lines. Is that right?
Which power line? I'm not sure which power line.
On Rockwood Parkway, the power lines were buried
That was
as a result of
feeder
power
308.
lines?
That's feeder 308. That was one of the first feeders that we initiated the work
Right.
with of the DC plug.
Okay, I just have two more quick questions, and then I'll disconnect. But one is, I would suggest that you communicate the all the progress and anticipated work for DC plug on Nextdoor, Wesley Heights, whatever neighborhood. Our neighborhood is Wesley Heights. And it looks like you're going down 49th Street, which would be Spring Valley. And I suggest that you post on Nextdoor when you are going to be doing construction for these feeder lines, so that the handouts are nice, but the maps are very small. And our ANC only meets once a month, and they don't necessarily broadcast efficiently their meetings, although you will present to the ANCs. So I'm suggesting that you use Nextdoor as a conduit to informing the neighborhoods that you're going to be working in of your efforts. Number two is, when you say that you're going to be restoring the neighborhoods to their original condition, sidewalks and or streets, are you going to be just patch paving, or selectively, are you working in tandem with DDOT, who's done some sidewalk replacement, and Washington Gas Light has done some partial paving? Are you going to repave the entire street, or just the sections that you're going to be working on?
So this project is actually a joint venture with Pepco and DDOT. So the roadway is completely restored at the end of it. Caesar, if you want to go into further detail.
It all depends on the impact. Most of the work happens within a travel lane or on the parking side, so we will do a full restoration of that travel lane and parking side. Similar fashion of what utility work that we do the travel lane space impacted.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, and we'll be looking forward to what's ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And sir, I know you said you weren't able to view the presentation. It'll be posted on that website that I was referring to within about the next 48 to 72 hours.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple more questions that are in the chat. I think we kind of touched on this, but just to make sure, is there a plan of where the boxes will be installed along 49th Street? I want to do some landscaping in the parking strip on 49th Street, but would rather not do the work if that parking strip is going to be dug up. And to answer that, to what Caesar was saying earlier, right now we're still in design. We're approaching the 100% design. Once that's solidified, we will be out to let residents know that are close to any structures where they will be. So if you give us about a month or two, but typically during construction, Caesar, is there much of a chance outside of the TEs that these residents may have?
No, you pretty much cover it. That's it. I'm trying to figure out how to answer most of that, but we still in the design phase, so it's too early.
Yeah.
Yep, that's sorry. I wish I had a better answer.
I hope that answers your question, Sarah. If you want us to go into any more detail, let me know. But right now it's just a little too early for us to have any solid answer for you. And then the last question I have in the chat, again, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or send a message in the chat or Q&A and we'll address it. But the last question I have right now is, how is this being coordinated with DC Water, which will be undertaking lead pipe replacement and some significant digging from city lines to the home?
During the design phase, DC Water sees our plans and they let us aware of their construction phase. Since we are in tangent with the DC lead pipe water replacement, and currently we just communicate with each other to see their timeframes to make sure that we're not there. If we're impacting at the same time, then we make sure to coordinate our timeframes. But what we do is of course, it's water. We try to stay away. Electricity and water don't mix, so we try to stay away from any type of water work during electricity.
Also note, I think that work is mostly on the private side
Correct.
for lead-free DC, and everything we'll be doing is in the public space.
That is correct. Thank you. I omitted that as well.
But if DC, I think while I was out there, I think I saw DC Water already working. If they're actively working, our construction isn't coming for about another year or so. Great, thank you. Right now, I don't have any other questions, but please feel free to send it while we wait another moment or two to see if anybody else has a question. Oh, I see another hand raised. 202, I'm going to unmute you. This may be the same from earlier. I don't know if you raised it again or I forgot to lower it, but I requested unmute. If you want to unmute, you can accept. If not, oops. I see you unmuted and then I muted you again. I'm sorry. I sent another request.
Hi, this is Tim Talley on Nebraska Avenue, 45th Street again. Have you also considered working with Verizon in burying their FiOS lines at the same time, or is that something that you haven't interacted with Verizon on?
In similar fashion to the response of DC Water, we are required to send our plans to Verizon on all utility companies, and they provide our comments and feedback. They have not mentioned any adjacent work or parallel work to put those lines underground with ours.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Of course. I'm going to put you back on mute and lower your hand. If you have another question, please feel free to raise your hand.
I will, Peyton, to answer additionally in the question, this may be also part of the electrical construction rather than the civil construction as well. Verizon can join that venture with Pepco during the electrification phase rather than the civil construction.
Great. And I know, Caesar, we've met before in regards to something similar. And I think the concern was that the primary lines going underground were too high of a voltage to have those lines in Verizon.
Correct.
Trying to add on to the conduits. Elise, I see you rose your hand. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. As previously, there you go.
Hey, thanks. So now that you've mentioned the voltage, what kind of voltage is this system going to include? Like, I guess on our feeders, what do these phases look like? Like even in the transformers, you're going to have to speak in small, easy terms because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'll pass that to Pepco because I am with you, Elise. So.
Hey, good afternoon, Ellis. This is Jignesh. This is a 4 kV feeder supply 4 kV voltage. So, and it's high voltage, but it's not that comparatively to the transmission line. That's a 230 kV volt. And there's another one that's a 13 kV feeder. That's a distribution feeder. So this one is lower than our normal 13 kV.
Okay, can you say that one more time? You were breaking up just a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is 4 kV feeder. This feeder supply from our 4 kV substation. So this is 4 kV feeder that we're constructing that with 13 kV.
Thank you.
And just to clarify with the Verizon question they asked, Pepco doesn't include Verizon line with the Pepco line. That has to be separate because of the, like Caesar said, it is high kV. Voltage is higher.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that for us, Jignesh. Again, I'm gonna pause for another moment or two and make sure that there's no more questions. Please feel free to send them in the chat or in the Q&A. You can raise your hand, or if you're calling in, press *3 to raise your hand and we can unmute you. In the meantime, I do want to highlight the product website, the product email, and the phone number. These should all be on the flyer that you received. But the product website is www.dcpluginfo.com. You can sign up for the listserv there to get automated updates sent directly to you as they come out, especially once the construction phase begins. If you have any questions, you can feel free to send them to questions@dcpluginfo.com. And then the 24-hour hotline is 1-844-758-4146. And I'm still seeing no questions. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time to attend the meeting tonight. And looking forward to seeing you guys in the future as we hold more meetings and are beginning construction in the area. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.